The night my son lost his future, the hospital floor under my boots was still sticky with his blood, and a stranger in a white coat calmly told me a sheriff had blown my 17-year-old's kneecaps apart because he didn't like the way the boy looked at him. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment your city or country. They always say hospitals smell like antiseptic and lemon cleaner. To me, that night, it smelled like metal and guilt. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, too bright for the hour, and every time the swinging ER doors opened, I could still hear echoes of Logan screaming, like they were trapped in the steel and glass. My son is 17, I kept repeating to the surgeon. 17. Why would a cop shoot a kid's legs? The man just looked at me with those tired, practiced eyes doctors get when they've had to deliver bad news too many times. Sir, he said quietly. His patella on both sides is shattered. The bullets went in clean but destroyed the joint. We'll do everything we can, but you should prepare yourself for the possibility that he may never walk normally again. I remember nodding, like I understood. I didn't. I heard the words, but they hit something deeper than my ears, somewhere in that place that used to plan exits, routes, threats. The part of me I'd buried years ago. Morgan clung to my arm, so tight her nails dug into my skin. This is your fault, she whispered, voice breaking. You told him to always look a man in the eye. You did this. I didn't answer her. If I opened my mouth right then, the wrong part of me might come out. They wheeled Logan past us, half-conscious, his face gray, lips chapped, brown hair matted with sweat. Both his legs were wrapped thick from mid-thigh to shin, red seeping through the gauze like someone had tried to erase his kneecaps and run out of ink. He saw me for half a second. Dad, he croaked. I didn't. I just looked at him. Then the doors closed, and he was gone again. You'd think a father would break then, scream, punch a wall, collapse onto the tile. I didn't. I just stood there, feeling that old, cold version of myself sliding back into place like a weapon being assembled piece by piece. The nurse at the station tried to explain the incident in a careful, scripted tone. The sheriff reports that your son was being aggressive, possibly reaching for, stop, I said. You weren't there. Her eyes flicked away. That told me more truth than anything she could have said. I didn't see the shooting in person. That almost makes it worse. I have to live with the version in my head, and it plays on a loop whether I want it to or not. Here's how it happened, according to the kids who were there. Logan was on Main Street around sunset, standing outside the little burger place with two of his friends, Ryder and Preston. No drugs, no alcohol, no trouble, just fries, jokes, and the boredom that comes with living in a town with one stoplight and too many secrets. Sheriff Victor's cruiser rolled up slow, that arrogant crawl cops use when they want you to feel them before you see them. He killed the engine right by the curb, lights off, window down. Victor stepped out like he owned the zip code. Big belly, bigger ego, hand resting on his belt where his gun sat like punctuation on everything he said. Evening, boys, he called out. You enjoying my sidewalk? Ryder told me later that Logan didn't say anything smart. He didn't say anything at all. He just turned his head and looked at Victor, the way I taught him to look at men. Not defiant, not cowering, just straight on, present. Apparently, that was enough. Victor took a step closer. You got a problem with me, son? Logan shook his head. No, sir. Then why are you staring? Victor said, You think I won't put you on the ground? You have to understand something about men like him. They don't see boys like my kid. They see an audience, a mirror, something that might show them who they really are if they look too long. Ryder swears Logan started to look away, hands visible, empty. We're just waiting for our ride, Sheriff, he said. We're not causing trouble. But Victor had already made a decision. Or maybe that decision was made years ago, the moment this town handed him a badge and told him he could decide whose fear mattered. Witnesses say Victor grabbed Logan's shoulder and tried to spin him around toward the hood of the cruiser. Logan stumbled. He's a tall kid, all knees and elbows, still growing into himself. His leg hit the curb, he flinched, and Victor took that half flinch as an excuse. The first shot went into Logan's right kneecap at point-blank range. Bone and cartilage don't scream, but the people around you will do it for them. Logan went down, instinctively twisting away from the pain. The second shot shattered the left. The third, nobody can agree whether it was necessary, but it landed in what was left of the right, like Victor was underlining a sentence only he could read. By the time Ryder's trembling fingers found 9/11, Victor was already shouting into his radio, painting a story in real time. Suspect lunged. Reach for something. I feared for my life. People peeked out of windows and pulled out their phones, then thought better of it and dragged their cameras back down. In small towns, survival looks a lot like pretending you didn't see anything. I got there just in time to see them loading my boy into the ambulance. His sneakers dangled off the edge of the gurney, laces soaked in red. One of them still had a scribble from where he'd written his jersey number on the sole. He was supposed to have tryouts next month. Victor stood a few feet away, talking to a deputy, voice low, posture relaxed. Not a man who had just blown apart a teenager's legs, but a man who'd written a report in his head and was rehearsing it. Our eyes met for the first time that night. He looked at me the way he must have looked at my son, testing, measuring, bored of his own power. "Sir," he said, like he was doing me a favor, "your boy made some bad choices tonight. We'll sort it out down at the station once the doctors are done." I stared at his holster. 3 slots empty. 3 rounds accounted for in my son's body. "Bad choices," I repeated. My voice sounded strange in my own ears, flat, steady, like I was back in a place where panic got people killed. He didn't know my name yet. To him, I was just another father to intimidate, another problem to file under handled. He had no idea who he was talking to. No idea what kind of men I used to lead. No idea how many nights I'd rehearsed worst-case scenarios and walked out alive anyway. Back in the hospital, hours later, Morgan finally let go of my arm and collapsed into one of those plastic chairs that make everyone look smaller than they are. "I can't do this, Grant," she whispered. "We can't go against him. You know what happens to people who fight him. Please, just let the lawyers handle it. Don't become that man again." She meant the man I'd been before the garage, before the oil-stained hands and quiet routine. The man whose record has more blacked-out lines than words. What she didn't know, what nobody in this town knew, was that I hadn't stopped being that man. I just stopped giving him orders. I walked away from her and out through the sliding doors, letting the night air hit my face. The parking lot was almost empty, humming with the distant sound of highway trucks and a soda machine buzzing near the entrance. Across town, I could see the faint glow of the sheriff's office sign, that cheap backlit plastic washed in yellow. I stood there for a long time, hands in my pockets, feeling my heartbeat slow until it matched the steady, quiet rhythm I hadn't needed in years. Victor thought he'd just put some kid in a wheelchair for staring at him. He thought the paperwork, the badge, and this scared little town would cover him like they always had. He didn't know he'd just turned his gun on the wrong family. He didn't know that the man he nodded at in that parking lot used to lead SEALs into places where men like him didn't walk out. And he sure as hell didn't know that I wasn't going to fight him with bullets. I was going to fight him with something he'd never trained for: truth, time, and the kind of patience you only learn when you've already made peace with dying. Logan didn't come out of surgery walking or talking. He came out wired, drugged, and quiet in a way a 17-year-old boy should never be quiet. ICU glass turned him into a display. Tubes in his arms, monitors flickering in green and gold, both legs wrapped from mid-thigh down, elevated like they were fragile antiques instead of the same knees that used to slam doors and pound down our hallway. A nurse in blue scrubs buzzed us in. "Only a few minutes," she said. "He needs rest." They all said that, as if rest could grow backbone. Morgan walked straight to his bedside and grabbed the rail, knuckles white. "Logan, baby," she whispered, voice cracking on the last word. "We're here. Mom's here." His eyelids fluttered, heavy from pain meds. One hand twitched against the sheet, reaching for something that wasn't there. I stayed a step back, by the door. Distance is something you learn when you've seen men hooked to machines. How close you can get before your own emotions start getting in the way of what needs to be done. Pain levels high. The nurse murmured, adjusting a drip. We're managing it as best we can. Ortho will talk to you more in the morning about reconstruction options. Reconstruction. They said it like we were talking about a broken chair. Logan's eyes finally found mine. Not all the way open, but enough. Dad. His voice sounded raw, sanded down. I didn't run. I didn't touch him. Every instinct in me wanted to say, I know. Instead, I stepped closer and let my hand rest on the cold rail between us. You don't have to explain anything right now, I said. Your job is to heal. The rest is on me. His gaze drifted toward the bandages swallowing his knees. They feel gone, he whispered. Like they're not there. There are some lies a father is supposed to tell. It'll be okay. This is temporary. You'll be back on your feet in no time. None of those words came out of my mouth. We're going to fight this, I told him. That's what you hold on to. Not him. Not what he said. Us. A weak smile flickered, then faded as the medication pulled him back under. When we stepped out of the room, the hallway felt narrower. The ICU always does. You notice every sound. The beep too fast in one room, too slow in another, the hiss of oxygen, the low TV murmuring some game in a waiting area where nobody cares who wins. Morgan spun on me as soon as the door eased shut. Did you hear what he said? She hissed. He didn't run. He didn't touch him. You can use that. You can tell them he said that. Them who? I asked. The same people already writing a story where he's the villain? She folded her arms around herself, like she was cold. We get a lawyer. A normal one. We give statements. We follow the process. That's what decent people do. Decent people didn't put 3 rounds into our kids' legs, I said. My voice stayed low, but it hit her like a shove. Her eyes flashed with something I hadn't seen before. Not just fear, but calculation. Grant, please. You promised when we moved here. No more missions. No more whatever it is you used to do. We have to live here. We have to survive here. No more missions. She had no idea those were the only reason I knew how to survive anything at all. The nurse pointed us toward the family lounge. Plastic chairs, stale coffee smell, a vending machine humming in the corner like it was the only thing awake on purpose. A TV mounted in the corner played the local news on low volume. At first it was just background noise. Weather, a feel-good story, a commercial for a car dealership. Then I saw the banner at the bottom of the screen. Sheriff responds to officer-involved shooting. Turn that up, I said. Nobody argued. There he was. Sheriff Victor, in full uniform, hat off, hair combed, standing in front of the sheriff's office with an American flag behind him like a prop he'd rented for the occasion. He spoke in that rehearsed, grave tone people use when they want to sound sad, but not guilty. Tonight, one of our deputies was forced to make a split-second decision when confronted with an aggressive suspect who appeared to be reaching for a weapon. Aggressive suspect. Appeared to be reaching. I felt my jaw tighten. This was the script. I'd heard versions of it overseas when things went bad and someone needed to sound official while the truth bled out in the dirt. The individual ignored lawful commands, Victor continued. Our hearts go out to the family, but we stand behind our department's commitment to protecting this community from escalating threats. He never said Logan's name. He said individual, then threat. Easier to shoot labels than people. A reporter off-screen asked, Sheriff, can you confirm reports the suspect was unarmed? Victor's mouth curved in something that pretended to be patience. We are still reviewing all the evidence, including body camera footage, he said. It would be irresponsible to jump to conclusions before the investigation is complete. Morgan let out a tiny sound, somewhere between a sob and a gasp. Body camera, she said. So there's proof. See, this is good. They'll see Logan didn't do anything. I didn't answer. I knew how easily tapes get lost, how cameras just happen to be off, how footage goes missing when it doesn't match the story the man with the badge wants to tell. By the time the segment ended, The image on screen was a yearbook photo of Logan that the station must have scraped from social media. They chose one where he wasn't smiling, mouth half open, eyes mid-blink, so he looked more like a mugshot than a kid at a pep rally. The anchor said, "Sources say the teen has a history of disciplinary issues at school," and my hands curled into fists. Logan had one detention freshman year for being late too many times because our truck wouldn't start. That was his history. "Stop watching," Morgan whispered. "Please. It'll just make you angry." Angry was easy. What I felt was colder than that. Our town isn't big, but gossip travels faster than any ambulance. Within an hour, my phone started buzzing nonstop on the table next to the coffee cups. Text from a neighbor, "We're praying for you guys." I'm sure the sheriff did what he had to. Message from my boss at the garage, "Take the time you need. But maybe don't talk to customers about this yet. People are on edge." Nothing from the sheriff's office. Not an apology. Not a question. Just silence where accountability was supposed to be. Ryder's mom called, voice shaking. "Grant." I told him not to get involved, but he gave his name to one of the deputies as a witness. Now he's scared they'll come after our family. I don't know what to do. "Tell him he did the right thing," I said, "and tell him I won't forget it." I didn't add that doing the right thing in this town has a cost. He'd find that out soon enough. Across the room, two older men from town sat beneath the TV, talking just loud enough for the words to carry. "Kids nowadays," one of them said. "No respect. You don't stare down a man with a gun and expect nothing to happen." The other grunted. "Sheriff's just doing his job. If the boy was innocent, why is the news saying he had issues?" They didn't know I was listening. Or maybe they did and counted on me being too broken to respond. Either way, they told me what I needed to know. Half this town would rather trust a uniform than their own eyes. Morgan rubbed her temples, staring at the floor. "We can't fight all of that," she muttered. "The sheriff, the TV, the town, it's too big." "You're right," I said. "We can't fight all of it at once." She looked up, surprised at how calm I sounded. "Then what do you think we do?" I thought of the way my life used to work. Intel before action, patience before contact. You don't blow through the front door of a compound without knowing how many exits there are, who's inside, and what they're holding. "It starts with truth," I said. "Not theirs. Ours. We write down everything Logan remembers. Everything the boys saw. Every word that comes out of Victor's mouth on camera. We treat it like a mission file." Morgan blinked, recognizing that tone from another lifetime. "Grant, you wanted me to let the process handle it," I said. "I intend to. But if the process is rigged, we prove it. On paper. On video. In court." She shook her head, tears streaking fresh down her cheeks. "You're going to drag us all down with you." "No," I told her. "I'm going to drag the truth into the light and see who burns." Out in the parking lot later, under that same buzzing street lamp, I sat in the cab of my truck with the engine off and my phone screen lighting up my hands. I opened a blank note and typed a title at the top. Victor, Shooting, Logan, Main Street. Then I started listing every detail I knew, every time, every phrase, every witness, every angle. Names became bullet points. Times became coordinates. Lies became openings. In another life, I'd planned entry routes and exit points. Tonight, I was planning something quieter and far more dangerous to a man like Victor, a record he couldn't outrun. By the time I finished typing everything I could remember into that note, my thumbs ached and the sky over the parking lot had gone from black to that flat gray that means you've lost a night, and there's nothing you can do about it. Headlights slid past on the road, one after another. People on their way to jobs and routines who had no idea my son's entire future had just been rerouted from a locker room to a hospital bed. I went home to shower, not because I cared how I looked, but because I needed to wash the smell of antiseptic and fear off my skin. The house felt wrong the second I stepped in. Too quiet for morning, blinds still shut, the air heavy like it was holding its breath. Our kitchen table was never fancy. Just 4 chairs, some scars from dropped tools and school projects. But that morning it looked like a war room someone had abandoned in a hurry. Coffee mugs, an unpaid power bill. Logan's backpack slumped against a leg, one of his sneakers lying on its side like he'd kicked it off while running and never came back for it. Morgan sat at the table in one of my old sweatshirts, staring at nothing, a cold cup of coffee between her hands. Her eyes were red, but not the fresh kind of red, more like they'd burned out hours ago and were just stuck that way. "You should sleep," I said, dropping my keys in the bowl by the door. She flinched, like she hadn't heard me come in. "I tried," she muttered. "Every time I close my eyes, I see him on that stretcher." I didn't tell her I saw him on the pavement more often. The moment before the stretcher, the one I'd never actually witnessed, just reconstructed until it felt truer than my own memories. Instead, I ran the tap and splashed water on my face, watching it drip into the sink like a cheap baptism that didn't change anything. "We need a lawyer," she said suddenly. "Today? Not next week. Today." I dried my hands on a dish towel and leaned back against the counter. "I agree." She seemed thrown for a second, like she'd expected an argument. "Good. So we'll call Dawson." "Who?" I asked. "Dawson," she repeated. "You know, the guy with the office over by the hardware store. He handled my cousin's divorce. He knows everyone at the courthouse." That was exactly the problem. I pictured a man who played golf with Victor on weekends, who sent Christmas baskets to the same judge we'd be standing in front of, who believed keeping the peace meant never rocking the boat that fed them. "We're not hiring somebody whose kids call the sheriff Uncle Vic," I said. Her jaw tightened. "You don't know that." "I know this whole town is built on favors," I said. "Free oil changes, tickets ripped up, warnings instead of fines. You think any of those people are going to go to war with the man who signs their overtime slips?" She pushed her hair back from her face, fingers trembling. "So what? You want some stranger from the city who doesn't understand how things work here?" "Exactly," I said. "Someone who isn't scared of losing a barbecue invite." Her eyes flashed. "You're going to turn this into a crusade, aren't you?" she said quietly. "You can't just be his dad. You have to be that man again." That man. The one who'd brief teams in windowless rooms, maps spread out, satellite photos, red circles drawn around places most Americans couldn't pronounce. "I'm going to be whatever he needs me to be," I answered. "If that scares you, you might want to ask why." She recoiled like I'd slapped her, even though my voice never rose above conversational. For a second, I thought she'd say something sharp, something final. Instead, she just stood up, grabbed her mug, and poured the untouched coffee down the sink. "I'm going back to the hospital," she said, not looking at me. "You can play soldier with your phone and your notes. Just don't drag us all down trying to be some hero." When the door closed behind her, the house felt even emptier. I stared at Logan's abandoned sneaker for a long moment, then picked it up and set it neatly by the door, like somehow putting it where it belonged would coax him back to fill it. I showered fast, pulled on clean jeans and a fresh shirt, and grabbed my phone and the notebook I kept in my truck, the one I'd used for years to track parts orders and engine diagnostics. Now it was going to track something else. On the drive back, the town looked exactly the same. Kids waiting for buses, old men smoking outside the diner, Victor's cruiser parked in its usual spot by the courthouse like a trophy. If you didn't know any better, you'd think nothing had happened here at all. At the hospital, Logan was more awake, less floaty around the edges. Pain makes people look older. It had carved a year into his face overnight. He managed a real smile when he saw me this time. "Hey," he said, voice thin but clearer. "You look like crap." "That's how you know I'm your dad," I said, pulling the chair closer to the bed. "We match." His gaze flicked to the door. "Mom went to get coffee," he said. "She keeps crying when she thinks I'm asleep." I let that sit for a second. "How are you holding up?" He shrugged, then winced when the movement tugged something in his legs. "They feel heavy, and not there? It's weird." The doctor tried to explain it, but I kind of zoned out when he said multiple surgeries. We talked about small things first, his friends, school, the coach who'd texted to say the team was thinking about him. Then he went quiet, chewing on his lower lip the way he used to as a little kid when he was about to confess to breaking something. "Dad," he said finally, eyes on his blanket. "Be honest. Did I do something?" "With him." "With who?" I asked, even though we both knew. "The sheriff," he whispered. I looked at him. I wasn't trying to be a jerk. Did I disrespect him or something? I felt something twist in my chest. "Look at me," I said. He hesitated, then did. "You are allowed to look at any man's face," I told him. "Badge or no badge. You are allowed to exist on a sidewalk without being shot. You didn't do anything wrong." His eyes shimmered. "The news made it sound like I did." "The news doesn't know you," I said. "I do. You hear me." He nodded slowly, but I could see the doubt still there, like a stain that wouldn't wash out on the first try. A knock on the doorframe made us both look up. A doctor, different from the one last night, stepped in with a clipboard and a tired smile, launching in a talk about physical therapy timelines and potential hardware options. I listened, asked the right questions, wrote down terms I'd have to Google later, all while watching Logan's face go distant again as words like months, limited mobility, and uncertain outcomes floated over the bed. After they left, I squeezed his hand. "I'm stepping out for a few minutes," I said. "I need to make some calls about a lawyer." "You need anything?" "New knees," he tried, mouth twitching. "On back order," I said. "Everything else, I got you." Out in the hallway, I walked until I found a quiet corner near the end of the ward, by a window that looked out over the parking lot and the roof of the ambulance bay. I pulled up a contact I hadn't used in years, Nathaniel, and stared at the number for a long beat before deciding I wasn't ready for that call yet. Instead, I opened a browser and searched for lawyers outside our county, scrolling past ads that promised aggressive defense and quick settlements until I found one who specialized in civil rights and police misconduct cases. Amelia Hart, city 2 hours away, firm photo with her standing in front of a courthouse looking like she'd bite a corrupt official in half if the judge allowed it. I saved the number and was about to hit call when a reflection in the window caught my eye. Down the hall, just far enough away that she probably thought I couldn't see, Morgan stood with her back half turned, phone pressed to her ear. I wouldn't have paid attention if it weren't for her posture, stiff, shoulders hunched, the way she moved her free hand like she was trying to erase her own words from the air. I couldn't hear everything, just fragments carried on the quiet. "He's not letting it go," she was saying. "No, he's talking about outside lawyers. I told you, he's different when he gets like this." Silence on the other end, then her voice again, lower. "Just be careful, okay? I don't know what he's planning." She ended the call and stood there for a moment, breathing hard, before smoothing her hair and walking back toward Logan's room like nothing had happened. I stayed by the window, phone cold in my hand, watching her disappear around the corner. I'd spent years teaching myself not to assume the worst about people unless I had proof. It kept you from becoming paranoid, from seeing enemies where there were none. But in that moment, one thought slid into place and refused to move. Who the hell was she warning about me? I didn't call Nathaniel that day, but I did call Amelia. Her receptionist sounded like she'd heard every kind of emergency. Nothing in her voice changed when I said, "My son was shot by our county sheriff 2 nights ago. Both kneecaps. I need to know what my options are." They slotted me in for a video consult that afternoon. No travel, no waiting room. Just me in a borrowed family conference room at the hospital, laptop open on the table between a box of tissues and a plastic plant. When the screen flickered and her face appeared, Amelia looked exactly like her picture. Dark blazer, hair pulled back, eyes sharp in a way that said she'd heard more excuses from cops than I'd heard gunfire. "Mr. Grant, right?" she said. "Tell me what happened, in your own words. Start with the shooting." I walked her through it. Main Street, sunset, Logan with his friends, Victor's cruiser, the stare, the gunshots, the press conference. I gave her times, distances, descriptions. Where the kids were standing. Where the bullet fragments were found in his legs, as best as I remembered from the surgeon's quick sketches. She didn't interrupt much. Wants to ask, did anyone record it? Phones. Security cameras? Some people pulled out their phones, I said. And there are street cams on that corner. Whether anything survived, that's another question. Her mouth tightened. Body cams. Sheriff says there's footage. Says they're reviewing it. Uh-huh, she said, like she knew exactly how often that footage turned up conveniently corrupted. Okay, here's the blunt version. If his use of force was unjustified and we can prove it, you're looking at a federal civil rights case plus state claims. But all of that rests on evidence we don't control yet. Meaning? I asked. Meaning the people who shot your son are the same people who currently hold the reports, the camera files, the 911 tapes, she said. Our first fight is just prying those loose. I'd expected as much. You don't win anything without getting past the people guarding the doors. She leaned closer to the camera. I'll be honest, Grant. These cases are hell. They drag on. Department's close ranks. Your family will be under a microscope. They'll dig up every detention slip your son ever got and wave it like a flag. He had won, I said, for being late to school because my truck died. Then they'll make that sound like armed robbery, she said dryly. The question is, are you prepared to live in that storm for a while? Because once we start, we don't back off. I thought of Logan asking if he'd done something wrong by looking at a cop, of Morgan whispering that we couldn't fight this town, of Victor on TV calling my kid a threat. I'm already in the storm, I said. I just want a map. That got the faintest ghost of a smile from her. All right. Then step 1, we file notice and preserve every shred of evidence we can. I'll send you a list of documents to request in writing from the sheriff's office and hospital. Don't argue with them. Just ask. Politely. Let me do the fighting when they stonewall. And the sheriff? I asked. Do I talk to him? Not unless it's through counsel, she said. He's already building his narrative. Don't feed it. Also, she paused. Any reason to think he has a personal grudge against you? Anything from your past that could come up? That was a landmine I wasn't ready to step on yet. We've had a couple run-ins, I said carefully. Traffic stops. Small stuff. Nothing that explains 3 bullets per leg. She studied my face for a second, like she could see the parts one wasn't saying. Okay, she said finally. We'll find out what's under his badge. That's my job. Yours is to write down every detail you remember while it's fresh. No editing. Just facts. We ended the call with her promising to email forms and instructions within the hour. When the screen went black, I saw my own reflection. Tired eyes, gray at the temples. A man who looked more like a mechanic than anything else. Funny thing is, both jobs rely on knowing what happens when pressure hits a weak point. Back in Logan's room, Morgan was perched on the edge of the chair, scrolling her phone, thumb moving too fast for someone actually reading. Logan was half asleep, eyes closed, earbuds in. I could faintly hear the murmur of a game announcer from his phone. How'd it go? Morgan asked without looking up. She's taking the case, I said. We're starting the process to pull records, footage, all of it. She finally lifted her gaze. From here. From the city, I said. She's a civil rights attorney. This is what she does. Morgan exhaled sharply, like I'd confirmed her worst fear. So you're really doing this. Bringing in outsiders. Turning this into some televised circus. I'm trying to make sure our son isn't labeled a violent suspect for the rest of his life, I said. If that feels like a circus to you, maybe you've been sitting in the wrong audience. Her cheeks flushed. You think I don't care what happens to him? She snapped softly, glancing at the bed. I'm the one who will be here when people at the grocery store whisper. When the sheriff's wife stares at me at church. You can disappear into your work or your missions or whatever this is. I have to live here. I'm not disappearing, I said. I'm the one putting my name on the lawsuit. That paint's going on my front door, too. For a moment, we just stared at each other across the bed, our son's slow, steady breathing the only thing keeping the room from cracking in half. A nurse came in to check vitals, breaking the stare. We stepped back, said nothing while she wrapped a cuff around Logan's arm, tapped numbers into the monitor, and adjusted his blankets with efficient hands. His pain seems controlled for now, she said. Physical therapy will come by later to talk next steps. One of you will need to sign off on some paperwork. I will, I said. Morgan didn't object. When the nurse left, Morgan touched Logan's hair, smoothing it back from his forehead. I'm going to grab something to eat, she murmured. You want anything? I'm fine, I said. Go ahead. She slipped out, leaving just me and the machines, and the boy who didn't know his family was cracking along lines that had been there long before a bullet ever left a barrel. I pulled the notebook from my jacket and flipped to a clean page. At the top, I wrote, questions for Amelia. Underneath, I made a list, body cam access timeline, street cam custody chain, independent medical examiner options, witness protection from retaliation. Each bullet point was a piece of a puzzle I could feel, but not see yet. Logan stirred. Dad, he mumbled. Yeah, Bud, I said, leaning forward. Is he in trouble? He asked. The sheriff. Not yet, I said honestly. But we're working on it. He thought about that for a moment, gaze drifting toward the ceiling. I keep thinking about his face, he said. When he pulled the trigger. He didn't look scared. He looked annoyed. My throat went tight. That's why this matters, I said. Because men like that shouldn't get to decide who walks and who doesn't just because they're having a bad day. He swallowed. Just don't do anything stupid, okay? I don't want to watch the news and see your name under some headline. It hit me then. The real fear behind his eyes wasn't just that Victor would get away with it. It was that I'd become the monster the sheriff already told the town I was. I'm not going to give him that satisfaction, I said. I'm going to make him answer for what he did in a place where his badge doesn't mean he's automatically right. Logan let out a slow breath and nodded, his eyelids growing heavy again. Okay, he murmured. Just make him say it. Out loud. That I didn't do anything. I watched him fall back asleep, jaw unclenching, shoulders sinking into the pillow, and I made a promise I didn't say out loud. I would drag Victor into a room where every lie had a cost, and every bullet had a question attached to it. And I wouldn't stop until my son's name was cleared in the same public square where it had been stained. Later, when I stepped out into the hallway again, my phone buzzed with a new email from Amelia, subject line. Initial steps and preservation letter draft. Right beneath it, a text popped up from an unknown number. This town doesn't need outside troublemakers. Drop it before you lose more than your boy's legs. I stared at the screen, feeling that old familiar stillness settle over me. The one that comes right before you move, not out of rage, but out of purpose. I wasn't backing off. Someone had just confirmed we were hitting a nerve. I read the message twice, like maybe the words would change if I blinked hard enough. Drop it before you lose more than your boy's legs. Whoever sent it knew exactly where to aim. I saved the number instead of deleting it, labeled it unknown, threat, then forwarded a screenshot to Amelia with a short line. Didn't take long for someone to get nervous. She replied almost immediately, do not respond. We'll add it to the record. Keep every message, every voicemail. This helps our case more than it hurts you. Helping me and hurting me suddenly felt a lot closer than I liked. Still, a threat meant pressure, and pressure has a way of showing you where the cracks are. The next 2 days blurred into a rhythm I wouldn't wish on anyone. Mornings at the hospital, afternoons in small offices signing forms, evenings at the kitchen table building a paper trail while the town pretended everything was normal. I filed requests for body cam footage and 911 recordings at the sheriff's office, using the language Amelia had given me, keeping my voice calm even when the clerk's eyes slid away like she was embarrassed to be part of the machine. We'll be in touch once the investigation allows release, she said, handing back my copy without meeting my gaze. I'm sure you will, I answered, making sure she saw me note the date and time on the corner of the form. On my way out, I passed Victor's door. It was half closed, blinds drawn, but his voice drifted through, a low laugh, the scrape of a chair, the easy confidence of a man who still believed the room belonged to him. He stepped out just as I reached the hallway. For a second, we were too close. No TV cameras, no crowd, just him in uniform and me in a faded flannel and jeans. Grant, he said, sounding almost friendly. How's the boy? He's alive, I said. Can't say the same for his knees. He gave me that practiced, sympathetic frown they must teach in whatever academy he'd coasted through. It's a tragedy when things escalate like that, he said. I hope, for everyone's sake, we can move forward without dragging this whole town through the mud. You shot my son on Main Street, I said quietly. The mud's already here. I'm just not the one who tracked it in. Something flickered in his eyes, annoyance, maybe, or the first edge of worry, then disappeared behind the badge again. Careful now, he said softly. People are on edge. They don't need outside agitators making things worse. Outside agitators. Interesting choice of words for a man born 10 miles from here, talking to someone who's changed more countries than he's changed counties. I'm not bringing anything here that isn't already rotting under the floorboards, I said. Have a good day, Sheriff. I didn't wait for an answer. Back at the hospital, Logan was sitting up a little more, flipping through channels with a grimace every time he shifted wrong. He landed on a local station replaying Victor's press conference and immediately clicked away, face tightening. Can't escape him, he muttered. Feels like he's in the ceiling vents or something. Then we make sure he doesn't get to live rent-free in your head too, I said, dropping into the chair. I talked to the lawyer. She's moving fast. Faster than he's going to like. Is that safe? Logan asked. For you? For us? Safe. In my world, safe was always relative, measured in probabilities, not guarantees. It's safer than doing nothing, I said, and safer than letting his version of you go unchallenged. He nodded, but the crease between his eyebrows stayed. Morgan came in a little later with a plastic sack from the cafeteria, the smell of fryer oil trailing behind her. She handed Logan a smoothie he didn't really want and set a coffee on the windowsill without asking if I needed one. Any changes? She asked, looking at the monitors instead of at me. PT came by while you were gone, Logan said. They said I'll start with just moving my legs a little. Sitting up more. It's gonna hurt. Morgan swallowed, fingers curling around the back of his bed rail. We'll do whatever it takes, she said. Right. She glanced at me like it was a line I was supposed to echo. We will, I said. But the pain shouldn't have been necessary in the first place. That's the part I'm focusing on. Her jaw tightened again. That same tension that had been building since the first time I mentioned lawyers who didn't know our zip code. We'll talk later, she said under her breath. Away from him. Later came that night, back at the house. The kitchen light was off. Only the small lamp over the sink was on, throwing a circle of warm yellow on the counter where Morgan stood with her arms wrapped around herself. You're making people nervous, she said, without preamble. I set my keys down and hung my jacket on the chair. People should be nervous, I said. A kid got shot for existing near the wrong ego. I'm not talking about them, she snapped. I'm talking about us. Ryder's mom called again. She said deputies cruised past their house 3 times today, slow. Logan's friends are afraid to talk now. You think that's a coincidence? No, I said. I think it's pressure. That means what we're doing is working. Working? She repeated, incredulous. Grant, they have guns, badges, and you're past on their side. You think they won't drag out whatever you did over there and twist it? They can try, I said. Everything I did over there, I did with rules. He can't say the same. She laughed once, sharp and humorless. You really believe that makes a difference to people who just saw aggressive teen on the news? I let her words hang in the air. I saw you on the phone, I said finally. In the hospital hallway. Saying I wasn't letting it go. Telling someone to be careful of what I might do. She went still. You were listening? I was walking past, I said. Who were you warning, Morgan? Her eyes darted away, then back. My sister, she said. She was asking how you were handling it. I thought you were going to spiral. I was trying to protect us. It was a neat answer. Too neat. Your sister live in another county? I asked. Deputies don't usually cruise past her house when you talk to her. Color rose in her cheeks. You're paranoid, she said. You think everyone is the enemy once you decide you're at war. I studied her for a long moment. The way I'd study a door we suspected was wired. If I were at war, I said quietly, you'd know. This is me trying to solve it with paperwork. She turned away, shoulders shaking, whether from anger or tears I couldn't tell. I can't do this with you if you're going to see ghosts in every shadow, she said. I need you focused on Logan, not on hunting. Hunting implies I don't know what I'm after, I said. I do. I'm after one man and one system that thinks he's untouchable. Before she could answer, my phone buzzed again. This time it was an email from Amelia, flagged urgent. Just pulled preliminary phone records through a public request before they slammed the door, she wrote. We need to talk. There are patterns here you're not going to like. I felt the room tilt a little. Patterns, I muttered, mostly to myself. Morgan wiped her face with the heel of her hand. What now? She asked, exhausted. Lawyer wants to go over something she found. I said, I'll take it in the bedroom. Behind the closed door, I hit call and paced while it rang. Amelia answered on the second ring. I didn't want to wait until morning, she said. I've been going through phone logs we can access without a court order yet. Sheriff's line, department landline, some personal numbers we can tie to him. And I asked, and your family's number shows up more often than I'd expect before the shooting, she said. Specifically, one phone in your house. Late-night calls. Repeated. Then calls from the sheriff to that same number after the shooting, spaced between his statements and report filings. My stomach dropped even before she clarified. The number belongs to Morgan, she said. I triple-checked. Whatever is going on between your wife and that sheriff, it didn't start this week. The silence stretched until she broke it. Grant, she said carefully, if there's more here, an affair, pressure, anything, we need to know now. It changes motive. It changes everything. On the other side of the door, I could hear faint kitchen sounds, cabinet doors, the clink of a glass in the sink. My whole house suddenly felt like a crime scene I'd been living in blind. He didn't just shoot my son, I said slowly. He got inside my home first. And for the first time since this started, I realized the bullet holes we were dealing with weren't only in Logan's legs. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on top of the covers, staring at the ceiling fan, while the house clicked and settled around me like it was trying to keep its own secrets. Morgan came to bed late. I could smell the hospital on her, disinfectant and bad coffee. She slid under the sheets without brushing my arm, without a word. For years, I'd been able to tell what mood she was in from the way she breathed in those first few minutes. That night there was nothing. No sigh, no shift. Just a careful, practiced stillness that didn't belong to the woman I married. I waited until her breathing evened out, even if I didn't trust it. Then I got up, took my phone, and went to the kitchen. At the table, I opened Amelia's email again and looked at the call log screenshot she'd attached. Victor's number. Morgan's number. Timestamps. Midnight. 12:47 a.m. 1:13 a.m. A pattern as regular as patrol routes. Long before my son hit the pavement. You learn to read patterns in my old line of work. You learn that repetition is rarely an accident. I thought back over the past year, little things I'd glossed over. Morgan dressing up a little more for errands. Her phone face down on the table. The way she'd get tense whenever a cruiser rolled by. But not the way people get tense when they're scared. More like the way someone looks when they hope they won't be recognized. I scrolled further down the email. Amelia had written, this doesn't mean she knew what he was going to do. But it does give him motive and a direct line into your home. If she's cooperating with him now, he may be getting real-time updates on your strategy. I stared at that line until the words blurred. If she's cooperating with him now. The next morning, I got up before the sun and was halfway through making coffee when she walked into the kitchen in her robe. Hair pulled back, no makeup, eyes shadowed. She looked like my wife and like a stranger wearing her skin at the same time. We have to be at the hospital by 9, she said. PT wanted both of us there when they explained the schedule. Okay, I said. We can leave in an hour. She opened the fridge, took out the carton of orange juice, then stopped halfway to the counter when she saw the printed pages spread out where I usually kept the mail. I'd laid the call log there on purpose. She set the juice down slowly. What's that? Phone records, I said. Our home line. Your cell. The sheriff's office. His personal number. All dancing together like they've known each other a while. Her face drained of color. You went through my phone? I didn't have to, I said. The logs are public once you know which doors to knock on. What I want to hear is why my wife has more late-night contact with the man who shot our son than I do. She pressed her lips together, fingers curling in the edges of her robe. For a second, I saw the war behind her eyes, denial loading up, excuses lining up behind it. Don't lie, I said quietly. If you start this with a lie, we're not coming back from it. Her shoulders slumped like somebody had cut invisible strings. She pulled out a chair and sat down across from me, staring at the papers, not at me. It wasn't supposed to be like this, she said. That's what people say about tornadoes and fires, I answered. They still burn the house down. She flinched, but didn't argue. It started small, she said. He pulled me over last year for a broken taillight. I was on my way back from my sister's. You were on a double shift at the shop. We talked. He asked how things were at home. I said you were different these days. Distant. Always on edge. Always on edge, I repeated. You mean quiet. Watching exits. Not sleeping. I didn't say anything you hadn't admitted. She shot back, a flash of the old Morgan surfacing. You told me yourself sometimes you felt like your head was still overseas. I was scared, Grant. Scared for you. For us. So you went to the sheriff instead of a therapist, I said. Solid choice. She rubbed her temples. I didn't go to him. He kept showing up. At the store. At church. Asking if everything was okay. Saying how hard it is for families when soldiers come back. How he'd seen things on the job he couldn't forget either. I could practically hear his voice. Soothing, confessional, painting himself as the only one who understood. Predators learn your softest spots first. One night, we talked in his truck for a long time, she said, voice dropping. You'd come home late, smelled like beer from the guys at the shop. You wouldn't talk about anything. Victor asked if you'd ever been violent. If I felt safe. I remembered that night. I'd had exactly one beer handed to me after we closed, more out of politeness than desire. I turned down the second, come home, and found Morgan already in bed facing the wall. I told him no, she continued, that you never laid a hand on me. But you were coiled, like you could snap. And he offered to keep an eye on things, I guessed. She nodded. He said if you ever scared me, I should call him. That's when the late calls started. At first it was just me venting, saying you were withdrawn. How I worried you'd explode at the wrong person. She swallowed. I might have made it sound worse than it was. To keep him on the line. There it was. The piece neither of us wanted to say out loud. You were sleeping with him, I said, no accusation in my tone, just fact. She closed her eyes. It didn't start that way. But it ended that way, I said. Before or after he put 3 bullets in our son? A tear slipped down her cheek. Before. I let myself feel it. I didn't shove it down or channel it into something sharp like I would have years ago. I just sat there and let the betrayal wash over me. Not because I liked the feeling, but because you can't patch a hull if you pretend it isn't leaking. Did you tell him about Logan? I asked. About the way I raised him? About me telling him to look men in the eye? I told him you were hard on Logan, she said quietly. That you pushed him, wanted him disciplined. He said kids like that were the ones who ended up challenging authority. That he had to watch boys like yours. Boys like yours. So when my son looked at him, it wasn't just a stare to Victor, I said. It was a test he thought he had to pass. In front of the town. After months of hearing about the angry veteran at home. Her shoulders shook. I didn't know he'd. I swear, Grant, I never thought he'd. I held up a hand. I believe you didn't aim the gun. But you put ammo in his stories. We sat in silence for a long moment, the fridge humming, the clock ticking too loud on the wall. What are you going to do? She whispered. Legally. I said. Use this. It gives motive. Shows he came into that moment with a bias he built on your pillow. She flinched like I'd slapped her. And personally? She asked. Personally, I said, standing up. We're done pretending our marriage is what it was. I'll stand next to you in front of doctors for Logan's sake. I'll keep the house stable until we figure out custody, finances, all of it. But whatever was between us before Victor doesn't survive this." She covered her face with her hands, shoulders folding inward. I wanted to comfort her out of habit, but some lines, once crossed, don't get erased. On the drive to the hospital, we sat in the same car and inhabited completely different worlds. Logan noticed the distance as soon as we walked into his room. "You guys fight?" he asked, trying for a joke and missing. "We're just tired," Morgan said quickly. I didn't contradict her. There are some truths you don't lay on a kid whose legs are full of metal. Not yet. Maybe not ever, if you can help it. Later, while PT worked his knees gently and Logan clenched his jaw against the pain, my phone buzzed with a new email from Amelia. Subject line: "Next steps." We leveraged this. Victor had taken my son's kneecaps. He'd taken my marriage apart one phone call at a time. He thought those were the only things I had to lose. He hadn't seen what a man looks like when everything that made him polite has already been stripped away. The town didn't change all at once. It never does. It shifted in inches, in whispers, in documents, in the way people looked at Victor when they thought he wasn't watching. Amelia moved faster than he expected. She filed the suit, sent preservation letters, and then did something that rattled the department more than any angry speech could have. She forced them into daylight. A hearing date was set, not for the full trial yet, but for whether key records and body cam footage would be released. It was the first crack in the door. The courthouse smelled like furniture polish and old paper the morning we walked in. Logan was in a wheelchair near the front, his legs braced, jeans cut carefully to fit around the hardware. He wore a collared shirt like he was going to a school presentation, hands folded tight in his lap. I could feel the tremor in them even from beside him. Morgan sat on his other side, smaller than I remembered her being in rooms like this. We hadn't talked about the affair since that morning in the kitchen. There wasn't anything left to say. Our conversations had narrowed to medical updates and practical details, and I could tell even that was more than she felt she deserved. Victor came in through a side door, flanked by his lawyer and 2 deputies. No uniform today, just a suit that didn't quite fit right, tied too tight, jaw clenched. He scanned the room, taking attendance. His eyes skipped over me at first, then came back and lingered on Logan. For the first time since this began, I saw something that looked like discomfort flicker under his practiced politician face. The judge was a compact man with tired eyes and a voice that carried without ever needing to shout. He started with formalities, case numbers, motions. It all sounded like static until Amelia stood. When she spoke, the room woke up. "Your Honor," she said, "my client's 17-year-old son was shot multiple times in both knees at close range by an elected official. The sheriff's office has framed this as a necessary act of self-defense. We are simply asking for the chance to compare their story to the facts. That means full access to body camera footage, dispatch audio, internal communications, and relevant phone logs, including any communication between Sheriff Victor and members of the Grant family leading up to the shooting." Victor's lawyer objected, of course, talked about ongoing investigations and privacy and dangerous precedent. But the judge's gaze didn't leave Amelia's exhibits: photos of Logan's legs, copies of the falsified report language, and, most damning, the phone records tying Victor and Morgan together in the months before the shots. "This court takes officer safety seriously," the judge said, "but it also takes officer accountability seriously. The public trust is not a blank check." He granted most of Amelia's motion: body cam and audio to be produced under protective order, internal emails and text logs to be reviewed in camera. It wasn't everything, but it was enough. In the weeks that followed, the story that Victor had built around my son started to fall apart piece by piece. The body cam they'd hoped to hide showed a boy with open hands, not a weapon. The audio caught Victor's tone, mocking, provoking, not a man in fear for his life. Other complaints weaved into the record, a pattern of disrespectful young men ending up on the pavement, of tickets waved away for friends, of pressure on witnesses. Amelia threaded it all together for the court like she'd been born to do it. "This is not a split-second mistake in a vacuum," she said at a later hearing. "This is a man who walked into that moment already convinced that my client's son was a problem that needed to be put down. And he didn't come to that conclusion alone. He had help feeding that story." She didn't look at Morgan when she said it, but everyone else did. Morgan shrank in her seat, eyes shining, knuckles white on the handle of Logan's chair. I didn't reach for her. That wasn't my job anymore. The state launched its own investigation once enough of the truth leaked into daylight that ignoring it would have looked worse than acting. Internal affairs came through the sheriff's office like a brush fire. Deputies who once walked with their chests out now shuffled, glancing over their shoulders. Some quit. Some cooperated. Some doubled down on their loyalty to Victor and learned the hard way that loyalty and legality aren't the same thing. In the end, it wasn't just my case that brought him down. It was all of them together. The excessive force complaints, the falsified reports, the affair with the wife of the man whose kid he crippled, the text where he joked to a deputy that he'd taught a little punk some manners. Every piece painted a picture no press conference could wash away. The day of the final civil hearing, the courtroom was full. Not just for us, for what it meant. The judge read his findings slowly, methodically. He found that Victor had violated Logan's civil rights, used excessive force, and knowingly falsified elements of his report. He referred the case for criminal charges at the state and potentially federal level. He ordered a significant settlement for Logan's long-term care to be paid by the county's insurer and, in part, personally by Victor. He recommended that Victor never work in law enforcement again. Victor didn't explode. He didn't cry. He just sat there, shoulders slightly hunched, as the identity he'd built around his badge was peeled off in front of the same town that once clapped for him in parades. When the judge finished, Victor's lawyer leaned over to say something, but he stared straight ahead, eyes unfocused, like a man realizing the show was over and he'd been the villain in everyone's story except his own. Logan squeezed my hand. His palms were still smaller than mine, but they didn't feel like a kid's anymore. "Does this mean he goes to jail?" he asked, voice low. "It means he finally has to answer to someone he can't intimidate," I said. "Jail, no badge, no more gun. That's up to the next court. But he doesn't get to tell your story anymore. You do." After the hearing, some people came up to shake my hand. A few apologized for believing the first version they saw on TV. A couple of deputies nodded at me with something like respect. Ryder's mom hugged Logan so hard I thought she'd break him, sobbing that she was sorry she tried to talk her son out of speaking up. He told her it was okay. I knew he meant it. As for Morgan, she stood a little apart, watching Victor being led down the hallway by two men in suits. She looked like someone who'd finally realized the man she'd bet our family on had been bluffing with someone else's chips. She didn't reach for me, and I didn't offer anything more than a small nod when our eyes met. We'd figure out the paperwork of our lives later. Some endings don't need a scene, they just need honesty. That night, back on the same stretch of Main Street where everything started, I pushed Logan's chair slowly past the burger place. The pavement was clean, no stain, no chalk outline, nothing to mark what had happened here except the way his breath caught for a second as we rolled over the spot. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded, watching the sky more than the ground. "I've been thinking," he said. "If he hadn't done it, I'd still be running drills after school, worrying about grades and girls and stupid stuff. I don't know who I'd be. I don't know if I like that this is part of me now, but I like that it didn't break us. It changed us," I said. "But breaking and changing aren't the same thing." He looked over at me. "Are you going back?" "To anything." I knew what he meant. The teams, the missions, the part of me that only felt alive with a pack on my shoulders and orders in my ear. "No," I said. "My war's here. Making sure men like him don't get to write the rules without someone watching." We went quiet for a while, just the sound of the wheels on the sidewalk and the faint music from a bar down the street. Finally, Logan said, "You ever wish you'd just let it go?" just healed my legs and moved on. I thought about it. About the late nights, the threats, the way our family had been ripped open in court. About the other families who'd stopped me in hallways to say thank you because they hadn't had the strength or the proof or the lawyer to do what we'd done. Sometimes I wish the price had been lower, I admitted. But not that we paid it. Because now, when you look at your legs, you don't just see what he took. You see what we made him answer for. He let out a breath that sounded a little like relief. Yeah, he said, I can live with that. And maybe that's all justice really is for people like us. Not getting everything back, but being able to look at what's left and say, I can live with this. Before we head out of this story, let me ask you something, person to person. If someone tried to rewrite your life with a lie, would you stay quiet? Or would you stand up the way Logan did and force the truth into the light? If you've stayed with us all the way to this moment, thank you for giving this story your time and your heart. I'd really love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments so we can see how far these stories travel. If this kind of grounded, emotional, slow-burn revenge and family drama speaks to you, tell me in the comments what kinds of betrayal stories you want to hear next. Wives cheating, corrupt authority, broken friendships, family manipulation, quiet karma. Whatever hits you the hardest, I'll bring more of those to you. And if you felt even one real thing while listening today, consider gently tapping like, hitting subscribe, and turning on the bell, not as a favor to an algorithm, but so you don't miss the next thriller-level, soul-deep revenge story we build together. Until that next story, take care of yourself, protect the people you love, and remember, sometimes the most powerful revenge is simply living a life that proves they didn't break you.